My name is Lori Gowin. I am a Premier Field Engineer with Microsoft. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. We pronounce it Birmingham, not Birmingham. I know there's a difference. I do know the difference. I help run the user group there in Birmingham. I'm also part of Women in SharePoint, and for you ladies in the room on Tuesday, we're going to have a Women in Technology luncheon panel. So be sure you come to that. All the women that are speakers are going to be on the panel. It's a time for us to network, ask questions, kind of encourage each other. That's my information, my blog, email, LinkedIn, Twitter. Feel free to connect with me. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, please put a note in there that I met you here, or we talked here, or you saw me here, because I get a lot of random recruiters and stuff, and I don't want to just connect with random people. So please at least let me know where you're coming from. All right, so we're going to get started really quick. How many of you have seen something that looked like this in an office somewhere? Probably doctor's offices a lot of times. You have all of these things. Well, believe it or not, your SharePoint can kind of look like this, right? This is what happens. Somebody just puts everything in one big document library with lots of folders and just starts cramming data in there. So we're going to talk about how to not let that happen to our environments. So to do that, we're going to talk about a thing called content types. Anybody ever work with content types before? Anybody ever work with SharePoint before? Okay, so if you're working with SharePoint, you're working with content types. You just may not know it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they are, why we need them, some of the benefits of them. I'm going to show you some really cool things that you can do, how we can implement them, some of the planning and implementation we're going to start in this session. The next session we're going to get more advanced, so once we start moving beyond getting the stuff in there, what we can do with it at that point. Okay. So really quickly, what are content types? This is what the definition says. A reusable group of settings for a category of content. Clear as mud, right? We can really tell what we're supposed to do with content types from that definition. But really what content types are is there's some components to it. So it can have one or multiple of these. It may have a template. So we can create forms and templates and tell people the way that we want stuff to look, right? May have metadata columns, and we know what metadata is, right? What's the simple definition of metadata? Anybody? Data about data, right? So it's just descriptions. Workflows, it may have a workflow that you want to happen every time. Information management policies, this is how long we're going to retain things, what we're going to do with it once we've reached its life cycle, how we're going to manage that data. And then there's this thing called the document information panel. That's really where we start integrating with Word and Office and some of the different client-side tools, so that when they open up a document, all of the metadata that's supposed to be filled in about that document shows up in the document information panel within the document itself. All right? Sometimes it's still kind of hard to think about really understanding what a content type is. So I've done a little thing here. We're going to build a person. So our content type is person. And what might we want to know about a person? Well, we might have a template. You know, they're human. Anybody not human in here? Because that might scare me. So there'll be a human. So we have a template there. We may have some metadata, some that we can really see, some that we have to just hear or know, or maybe they need to tell us. Maybe they have a name, a title, right? We have a name for them. We've called this one Bob Jones. Maybe we need to know what color eyes we have. Some blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes. Their height, their hair color. These are the things that we can see. Maybe we want to know what their favorite color is. I can't exactly maybe see that on a person. Sometimes you can, especially if they wear it a lot, right? So we may have some metadata about them. It could also be metadata about maybe are they married? Are they single? Are they divorced? Things like that. So there's a lot of different things that we want to know about metadata. Maybe we have an information management policy. Now in the U.S., we have this thing called a mandatory retirement age, where you can start drawing Social Security and all that fun stuff, and it's 62 and a half years of age. So the goal is to have it retire by 62 and a half years of age, so you're no longer having to work. So that maybe can be considered kind of an information management policy, right? Maybe we have some workflows we want. We want them to grow up. If you're creating your own little content types, do you have little content types? Anybody got children? You want them to grow up, right, and move out. Get an education, send them out for school. Maybe get a family of their own. So maybe there's a workflow there. Hey, I've got 2 little boys, and about 8 years, I'm going to be hoping that one of them continues their education, and then shortly after that, maybe gets married, brings me some grandbabies. I'd be okay with that. Then I can spoil them really well, right? I can undo all the bad stuff I've done to my kids. So if you think about it like that, that's how you can kind of start thinking about your content types. You have a template, something that you want. What do we need to know about it? What do we need to do with it? Do we need to keep it? Do we need to retain it? Is it going to go through workflows? So that's kind of where we can start thinking and making those parallels with our data. So where do content types exist? Any of those of you that said you still had 2007, there's one difference here. There's no enterprise content types. But before that, you do have list and site content types in 2007 and even in 2003. But enterprise content types is kind of those global content types, things that will go across our entire environment. Think about it like this. Vacation requests. Anybody like to take vacation or go on holiday? I like that. So everybody wants to do it. So if everybody's going to want to do it, it's something that needs to be at the enterprise level. If everybody needs to do it, then let's put it at the top level, the highest level possible. Site content types may be more at the site collection level. So a smaller group of your organization might want to do it. Think about like IT, right? IT works with some content types that everybody doesn't need, just IT needs. We work with things like servers and systems, and maybe we create server records that are our content types, but it doesn't need to go across the entire organization. All right, so we're narrowing down our focus. And then list content types is actually not something you want to create a list content type, a new content type right there within the list. But when that content type is applied and set up to be your custom list content type, that it becomes the list content type. And you can then still customize it even further there if you want to. All right. So any questions about that? That's a little bit confusing. And sometimes when you start looking at the list content type, because you go into a list and you say, I want to customize the content type and add new content types, then you click delete because you want to delete maybe the default content type that's there. Be sure and read that it says list content type. You don't want to delete the site content type or anything like that. So just be sure when you're going through and working with those that you're working with it at the correct level. All right, so SharePoint does come with content types. You work with them whether you know it or not, even if you haven't created your own custom ones. Things like items in a list or tasks, creating articles and pages. If you've done publishing in your environment, you do a lot of work with content types because you maybe create some custom pages and page layouts. And those are all part of content types. Working with contacts, Document's a common one, right? We all upload a document into SharePoint. That's what it becomes. That's how it gets that jumbled look that we saw at the very beginning. But here's a tip for you. Do not modify these out-of-the-box content types. Please don't go mess with them. Very, very bad things will happen. All right? Some very unexpected behavior will happen. I actually worked with a customer once that modified the item content type. Everything is based off of item. Everything is based off of item. They went in and modified the item content type out of the box. I went, oh, they were like, we're having all these problems. Yes, you're going to have lots of problems. So don't go messing with that. I know we hate the word title that shows up there, but just go change the label in the list. Don't go messing with that. Content types have relationships. So when you start building your content types, these out-of-the-box content types are meant to be your parent content types. They have parent-child relationships. Just like we all have children, we had parents. If anybody didn't have a parent, I don't know that you fit that human description. Might scare me a little bit. But we all have parent-child relationships. And our children inherit traits from us, right? And we inherit traits from our parents. I have blue eyes. I didn't actually get it from my parents. I got it from my grandparents because neither one of them had blue eyes. I was a little worried when I was a kid. But both of my kids have blue eyes, right? So they inherited my traits. The same thing happens in content types. They inherit the traits of the parent. That's why they give you some very, very basic defaults. Item that just has one field, title. So everything can inherit from that. And then you can build on it and add more information as you need it. Document. Well, maybe you want to take specific types of documents, or you want to customize the default documents with your logo. So everything has your logo on it for your particular organization. So the child content type inherits those settings, and then the parent content types, if you go change those, it's going to change everything down. Remember that company that edited the item? It changed everything because there's a box that says, hey, update all the things that inherit from this. They checked that box. And everything went nuts. But there's one thing to note. When you start looking at content types, you'll see this thing called categories or just titles. It's just groups, basically, of information, trying to make it easier to find what you're looking for. They do not affect parent-child relationships. It's just basically an address, right? Just because your child grows up, moves out of the house, doesn't make them not your child anymore. They just live at a different address. All right? So that's a little bit about how content types work and what they are. So now, why do we use them? I'm always asked this question a lot. Why do we need content types? Why should we have content types? Just start working with SharePoint. Well, there's some things that content types give us that we need and that your users really want, even if you don't know that they want it. It allows you to put the same kind of information in multiple locations, right? So everything looks and acts exactly the same, no matter where it's used. That vacation request, so you don't have 10 different versions of it everywhere. Anybody ever say, hey, I need to put in a request for something, and they email you a form? And somebody else emails you a different one, and then somebody else emails you a different one, and they all look a little bit different, and maybe nobody knows which version is the most recent version. So you get that a lot. But it allows us to do that so that the same piece exists everywhere, especially if you're using enterprise content types. It also allows us to put different kinds of content in the same location. Anybody do project management here? A couple of project management? Okay, so now I'm going to start talking your language for a few minutes. I don't know it very well, but I know a few things. But you deal with things like project charters and work streams and work breakdown structures and risk analysis and I don't know, all those weird terms, right? And they all have to be separate documents. But you can now say in a project, you can create a document library. If you've created those content types, when you go in there and you go, oh, I don't know where to start, if you click New and you've created those content types and attach them to that library, you can see New Project Charter. And it will open up. It'll have a default template. You've already set it up the way you want it. You just start entering your information. New risk analysis document. And you can start putting those things in. And it all is then self-contained in one document library. Right? It categorizes your content for your users, right? Anybody like to go somewhere and just show me everything I need about this one thing in one spot, or that relates to this in one spot, or that's like this in one spot? Like rolling up data. Show me all my tasks across everything. That's working with content types, right? Rolling up those content types into one thing. Standardizing behavior, workflows. Anybody work with workflows very much? Okay. If you don't, go see Laura Rogers' session on workflows. She's got some really good ones. She's got some great stuff in there. But standardizing behavior is very common, what we want, a repeatable process. For an expense reimbursement, right? We all want our money back when we have to spend it for business reasons. So I have an expense reimbursement and I need to send it to you for approval every time. Then I can create a workflow that does that. And I don't have to walk down there and maybe you're not at your desk. And, then I have to sit there and wait for you or email you, hey, I have a thing. It just is going to take us through that process every time. And then we can make that follow it everywhere it goes. So every time it's going to behave the same way. Whether it's your manager that needs to be approval or a specific person that needs to be in there, we can set that up. It allows us to centralize settings and management. So you can have a team that puts this stuff together and that makes sure that everything fits the way it's supposed to. A lot of times that's your communications department for things like documents and pages and stuff like that because they're in charge of the logos. They're in charge of what the company letterhead looks like. Anybody use company letterhead anymore? Like, no. We all use email, right? And then, of course, rolling up data, that's putting things together. There are very specific benefits, and I'm going to show you one here in just a minute, that allows for your users, so the people that are going to be working with the data, getting better descriptions. Everybody goes to a library and they see a document library, and the first thing they see is new, and then just document, right? That's very generic. But putting in their new project charter makes it very easy for them to know what they're supposed to do in that document library. That's how we end up with weird data in random places. We don't give them descriptions of what they need. So when we create a document library, a lot of times we just call it documents, put everything here. And then it just becomes that, a mash of everything in one spot. But if we said, here's a project document library, and we've created the content types, they can go there and know that only project data is in that. They're not just putting random stuff in there, right? It gives them a better idea of where content needs to go. It makes it easier for them to organize and see what's going on. We can sort and filter and create views of just those specific types of content that we want to see. It gives us some standards, some templates, if you will, that they would follow. We've already talked about project charter. We could have it laid out with what specific sections need to be part of a project charter, if it's going to have our logo on it, if it's going to have, specific formatting on the page, because we all like to set those things up, right? Especially if you're in consulting and you're giving documents to businesses outside. I like to say it makes it idiot-proof, right? They don't go in there and look at it and go, I don't know what to do. It makes it easy for them to know now what they're supposed to do. It gives us automation. That's the workflows, the things that are automatically going to happen, information management policies. One of the things that I did for a company that I worked with, they were a medical healthcare company, and they had specific contracts with doctors, and they had to keep those things for a specific set of time. So we went in and made an information management policy and a content type of doctor contracts, so that they knew automatically when they created a new one, the policy was automatically applied for them, and they would get notified when that contract was due or when it was up. Okay. And then, of course, the aggregation of data. That's that rolling up of data. Give me all of the project charters at once. Like, show me everything that's a project charter, and we can see what projects we've worked on and which ones we've completed. There's some very specific search benefits, and we'll really get into search in the next session. Metadata allowing you to get better results for search. Filtering and restricting search results by content type. So we can say, only show me documents, only show me PowerPoints, only show me Excel spreadsheets, things like that. One other thing that we can do is make content types more relevant to our users. We could say if you're in HR, you work with policies a lot, so we can create a content type of policies and give it a weight so that when they do a search and they're in HR, policies float to the top of those results automatically for them, making it easier for our users to find what they're looking for. All right, so I'm going to show you, and I've done I did videos this time. Yes?
Do you have a policy about questions? Can we ask as you go along?
Ask as I go along, or at the end if we've got time. I know it's kind of going to be fast because...
Yeah. There you were saying that to avoid, to give people help, we need content types.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the thing needs to be created with content types activated and well defined.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people who create the document libraries in my organization wouldn't appreciate the value of that, so they would just go ahead and say, new site, new document library called shared documents,
Mm-hmm.
let's fill it with folders. So are you saying we should perhaps turn off the permissions to stop them doing that? How could you get away from that?
So it's kind of works both ways. At that point, you would want them, whoever's creating that, they should be your power users, right? They should be able to create content types if they want. And if they have an idea of what's coming, they can at least create some generic ones. Because they would create the new site, create the new document library, and be able to create those content types. But as an overall organization, you also want to be able to create for your entire organization some broad-based ones, things like vacation requests or things like that. We're going to talk about planning and how to do that and some of the specific rules in just a few minutes, so I will answer it even further. But I'm going to show you really quick. So classically, I have problems with the network here. Every year, the network kills my demos. So I've recorded my demos. Don't think I'm cheating, but I was being safe. I'm working with the net. So we're going to do all the demos as videos this time. But I'm going to show you this video of this demo on some of the benefits. Let me pull it over here, make it big. Where'd my mouse go? Use my mouse. There we are. Make it big. All right, so what I've done is I've come in here and I've created some content types. And this is actually on-prem. You can do some of this stuff on Office 365, but this is on an on-premises version. So I've come in here and I've created some content types for my company. Some very basic, generic ways that I want everything, given it some templates, just a generic Contoso document. It's going to have the logo, some specific sections that we want. I've also created some for Excel. So I've created like an expense report. And I've created a PowerPoint template that I want everybody to have in our company and to be able to use. So now I've gone in, I created a document library called Contoso Templates. I've gone to the library settings. And in advanced settings, you have to remember to do this. You have to remember to turn on Allow Management of Content Types in order to be able to start adding your own content types. So I turned that on, and I've added my 3 content types: Contoso Document, Presentation, and Expense Report. All right, so every time I want somebody to create a document, I want them to work with these basic content types. But this would mean they'd have to come to this library every time, right? Right? Not necessarily. So what we can do is, as administrators, once we've created this content type and all of our standard templates are going to be in one place, there's some things that we can do in Central Admin that will make this happen so that when they're in Excel or PowerPoint, it's already there as a template for them. They can just go into PowerPoint and go New Contoso Presentation. So this is what it would look like. You can see if we're doing it just from the document library. They click New Excel Document, it opens up. So if we go into Central Admin, and in our service applications, and this is 2013 specific right now, and we use our user profile service, there's some really cool stuff that happens in here. We can do site and document library promotion. So there's a thing called Publish Links to Office Client Applications. It's going to publish these things to the Office clients themselves. So I've put the URL of the document library there. See all my templates. Called it Contoso Templates. And I could put description, further description if I want, and then types. But I've used document library with template synchronization. What that's going to do is when they open up Word or Office, it's going to check and say, oh, all your templates are supposed to be these templates so that you can use them. So now if I open up, I think I did Word. Yeah, Word. You see this featured and custom up here now? So if I click custom, there's my Contoso templates. So they don't even have to go to a document library to get the content types that I want them to use. Yes, sir?
Do all your users need to add that URL in? Or is it part of the Active Directory profile?
So it's part of their user profile with SharePoint. So it's part of the user profile services. And once they connect to SharePoint the first time, it'll pull it all down. You can actually pre-do some of that using group policy. So you can go and preset their sites and things and tell it to connect to this so that it'll automatically connect and pull those templates down for them when they power on their machine. And of course, here's my Contoso standard presentation as well. So pretty cool, right? Now we're not making them go to SharePoint to do it. It's right there in their office. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Can I ask, if you were setting this up on SharePoint 2013, what's the minimum version of Microsoft Office that you would need to have available in order to do that? Would it need to be Office 2013 as well?
Yes. Or you have to have 2010 with the most recent service pack, which I think too, because that includes the OneDrive for Business Sync. It all works with that OneDrive for Business Sync in the background, and that's part of that process. Mm-hmm. All right. So that's some pretty cool benefits, right? Like that's something that I didn't even know. And I've been working with content types for years, and I didn't even know about all that until fairly recently. So I'm still discovering cool things that you can do with content types. All right, so let's talk a little bit about managed metadata, because we kind of have to, right? So what is managed metadata? Well, there's two pieces. So there's the managed metadata service. There's two things that it provides. It provides the method for us to use enterprise content types, those content types that go across our entire organization, because it's what publishes those to our different sites. It also provides a framework for us to manage metadata terms and term sets, right? So the official language that we're going to use for things. What happens with this is terms get managed by some specific individuals or groups within your organization. A term set is really just a collection of terms that are kind of related. So we could have an HR term set, and things that would go into that would be some very specific HR terms, or IT term set, and things that would go into that would be some very specific IT terms. We may have some very generic ones that are company, and under there maybe we have all of our departments or our divisions, right? Like, and then we have the labels for those, and then break that down even further. One of the demos that I'm going to do in the second session, I've actually done this and had done it with some exercise stuff. So I do yoga. I love yoga. It's a lot of fun. If I ever quit SharePoint, I'm going to teach yoga. That's what I'll be doing. And one of the things that I did was I created a term set that's all yoga. And underneath that, I created some term sets that were specific, like the anatomical focus, or the type of yoga, the style, whether it was, hatha or, whatever. So I created these term sets and I managed them so that I could have some very official labels for things, and it would help me find what I was looking for faster. And when we look in the second session, you'll see how that really benefits you. But these actually can also be created and managed separate from your content types. You can have specific people that will manage these things. They can be managed at the site level or at the enterprise level. So you have both. Some of the benefits of them are things like managed navigation and filtering. That's really what we're going to focus on in the second session, is using that for navigation and to filter things. We're going to use it for things like indexed queries. So there's some really cool things you can do there. Making things consistent across our organization. In the U.S., we have this wonderful two-state abbreviation, or two-letter abbreviation for the states: AL for Alabama, AK for Arkansas, all these different things, right? Or no, AK is Alaska, AR is Arkansas. Yeah, see, right? And nothing's consistent, because if paper forms, you hand somebody a paper form and they may write out the word, they may use the two letters, whatever. But this allows us to be more consistent. We can make it managed. It will always be the same, and they select it from there. So we can officially organize that information. And then, of course, we can distribute the management of terms. So not one person has to do this all the time, because believe me, if you're the IT pro, you don't want to be the one doing that. All right, so a very quick demo here of how you would manage a metadata term store. I'm trying to make sure that we have enough time to have a break in between sessions here. Manage metadata term store 1. Make it big for you. All right, so I've gone in, and I'm doing it from the managed service applications, and you get the managed metadata term store. I'm going to give all these videos to Steve, so you may or may not get them. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know you're getting the slides, but I don't know if you'll get the videos. And you'll get this thing called a term store management thing. In the general, you'll have things like who administers the term store. You may have one or more there, but you can then delegate even the individual term sets to other. So I'm creating a term store here called Contoso, and then I can put who's in charge of it. I give it a description if I want, who's going to manage it, so if people are going to be managing it other than the owners, who can contribute to it, things like that. And in Contoso, my company, I'm going to create a term set called departments. And then under departments, I can create terms. HR, IT, I don't remember what all I created, finance. We all want to get paid, right? I don't know if I created more than one. Maintenance, right? Got to keep things clean. All right. So we created these things, In there, I can then create other stuff. One of the cool things is the search directories. So in search directories, you can create words that can be used for other terms or exclude words. We have a word in Microsoft that maybe we don't like that much. Bad word. It's called Google, right? It's a really bad word. So we could put that in there and say, hey, don't include this term when you're searching. So then if we go searching for it, it won't find anything, right? It's not that big a deal, but actually at a company that I worked for years ago, Laura Rogers and I used to work together for a healthcare company. It split, and I went with one of the new divisions. That division so hated the name and didn't want to associate with the old company that we used to be a part of. We had to literally go in and make it a bad word so that you could not search for it and find anything with it. It would not get indexed. Nothing with that word could be searched for or found. I had to do that. So this makes it so much easier to do that. You just go in and say, nope, bad word, can't do it, can't use it, and it goes away. So if you want specific words not to be able to be used in your organization, that's one way to do it. There's also a piece of it called tagging, and you can make a term available for tagging or not available for tagging. I do recommend you go in and create a naughty words list and use actual naughty words and say, no, you can't tag stuff with this, because inevitably the person that gets mad one day and wants to quit their job is going to go in and tag things with bad words. And you don't want that to be found in your company. Believe me, it happens. It really does. So I always recommend that you go in and manage those terms. That's the easy way. They've given you the way to manage it now so that it's already there out of the box. All right, so now we're going to move into implementing. How do we go about making this happen in our company so that we can keep things organized and keep it easy for our users? So here's my biggest tip. Don't rush. Don't skip planning. A lot of people go in, and I know this happened to me, and then you have to go back and clean up later, and they say, we're going to put it in SharePoint, and they plan how big they're going to make it, and they plan how much processor they need. They plan all this stuff, and they put it into place, and then they say, here. And your users go, what do I do with this? Right? Like you're making me use something else now? Why do I want to use that? Because really, your end users, right, if they've got a degree in finance, they want to play with Excel. They don't want to play with SharePoint. They don't care about SharePoint. That's not what they got their degree in. That's not what they're passionate about. They just want to do their job. Let them work with Excel. And now you have ways you can do that by going in and planning ahead and at least getting some basic content types in there for them to make it easier for your users, right? All right, so the first thing you want to start talking about is planning your terminology. What are the words that we use in our organization? Are we going to make them official? Will we have a department, or will it be a division? Or will it be a business unit or an organizational unit? Or will it be a team, right? Everybody's moving into that team mentality. We're going to create teams and not divisions or departments because that's very divisive, right? Are they going to be employees? Are they going to be agents? Or, what are we going to call people and things? So some very, very basic terms that you need to start thinking about ahead of time. Then you can do things like card sorting. Anybody ever done card sorting? Whiteboarding, maybe just making Post-it notes. It's an easy planning session to start planning your terminology. You just start planning. What kind of things do we need? So what are some of the very common things that our entire organization uses? Contracts, right? We use contracts a lot. Policies, procedures, letters. Do we use, if we're a project management consulting firm, we use project stuff a lot. So maybe it's a lot of project-related things. Everybody needs vacation requests. Everybody needs vacation requests. I've yet to go anywhere where somebody doesn't want to take some time off. Evaluations. I actually had to work with a company that wanted to create very specific templates for their evaluations and workflows around their evaluations. And we were able to do that using content types and workflows and have it follow it from place to place. So across the entire organization, every evaluation looked the same and behaved the same. So just kind of brainstorming, creating some of these things. Then you want to think about things like determining the scope of your content type. Is it going to be vacation request where everybody needs it? Or is it going to be something more specific for just a department? Then we need to know where that information lies, right? If you think it might grow beyond that department, go ahead and put it at the highest level you can, right? That's just kind of, things trickle down, not up. So once you've got it at a lower level, moving it to those upper levels is much more difficult. So create it at the highest level that you can. So enterprise, of course, is our highest level. Vacation requests go there. Maybe reimbursement requests go there. Expense reports go there. At the site or site collection level, maybe we have some very specific things that are specific for project management. So we had a project management portal. They are the only ones that are going to be using the project charters and all of that. So we create it there instead of at the top level. Now, if your whole organization is project management, maybe it goes at the top level. So it's the same across all. So really think about that when you start thinking about how you're planning out this stuff. And you really do have to plan. This should be part of your implementation process, not just the building of the servers and the network and the back end and all of that and putting it out there. This should be part of that. It really should. Right? Identifying who's going to own and manage what content, right? At the enterprise level, it needs to be a very specific set of group. A lot of times that's your communication department or HR, however you term those things. And then if it's at an IT level, okay, who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to manage those things? At a project level, is it going to be the project managers themselves, or are we going to have a specific core group that's going to manage those? Think about how often it's going to change. Is it going to change a lot? If it's going to change a lot, probably those would be more at your site or site collection level even, because once we get up to enterprise level, we don't want them changing a whole lot, right? We want them to be very standard and always the same as much as possible. We may have to add a few things or remove a few things here and there, but we want to try to do that. And definitely let's not forget training, right? Teaching them how to create the content types, how to go in and go new content type, how to create those columns and site columns, teaching them those things and what the importance is of those things. Once you've got some of the basics down, then you can actually start defining out your content types. So planning, are we going to use managed metadata columns? What columns are going to be not managed metadata? Planning our templates. We want all of our organizational documents to have our logo on the upper left-hand corner in the header, right? So we can go ahead and plan those things and start creating them. And then planning our relationships. This is managed metadata relationships and your content type relationships. So you have to start thinking about, okay, we have project charters. It's going to be based on a document content type. So our out-of-the-box document is going to be our parent. Our child is going to be our project management charter. And we're going to have a specific template. And what columns do we need around that? Do we need to know what department it's for? What kind of information do we need there? So here's some planning tools. Everybody needs tools. Pen and paper. It's an easy one. Doesn't cost you a whole lot. Most of us have pen and paper somewhere. I think I see a few out there. There is a content type planning worksheet that Microsoft has so lovingly provided for you. I will show you what it looks like. You may want to go in, modify it, change it. It's very basic, and you may want to change it around, make it work for you and your organization. But it does give you a place to start. That's Excel. Whiteboarding. Whiteboarding is used a lot in your planning phase, right? You'll sit down with a group of people. What are the terms? You can start writing things down. Whiteboard. Take pictures of it. Make sure you remember that. Don't let anybody erase it till you got it all copied somewhere. Anybody use mind mapping software? Okay, so that's another one. I've Reuven Gotts, I don't know if he's here or not, but he does a lot of presentations on working with managed metadata using mind mapping software. How are the terms going to relate? What makes sense there? And it really is a good tool. You can use Visio much the same way. I use Visio a lot because I'm more proficient with Visio, and I don't understand the mind mapping software as well. Just a different tool set. But I can make Visio look like mind mapping software with my connections and stuff like that. So either one works. Excel, of course, you can create your own Excel spreadsheet and just keep information in there. OneNote, so the information that you'll see in here, I've used OneNote as my whiteboard. So lots of different options there. And this time, I'm not pulling up a video. I'm just going to pull up a couple of examples here. All right, why aren't you coming up on the other page? Uh-oh. You can't see that. Back to my desktop. Give me a second here. Come over here and open it if it'll do it. There we go. All right, so here's this was my planning for the yoga stuff that I was working with. What content types we might need, what terms we might use, or what term sets we might have. And you can see I started at the top. And I used OneNote as my whiteboard, right? Because it was just me doing the planning. But if I had a group of people, we could do this on a whiteboard and then copy it to OneNote. It'd be basically the same thing. But you can see we started out with content types. What are the exercises that we're going to do? What kind of poses are we going to have? We need the details of how do we get into and out of that pose. What are some options? What are the things that we can do to modify it for people with disabilities or physical limitations? Then what kind of terms do we need about that? So we're going to start with our main term set of yoga, and then underneath that, the types, the categories, the anatomical focus. And then, okay, now we need to break that down a little bit further. So if we've got our 3 content types here, exercises, what is our parent content type going to be? And then what do we need to know about that? The exercise title and the division. So we were a gym company, right? And maybe we had cardio and we had other things, and then we also had yoga. But I'm breaking it down further for yoga. So we started with our parent content type. Then we come in and say, okay, we have our yoga pose. What's our parent content type going to be? We wanted pictures and images. So we're going to use picture as our parent content type. And then what else do we need? What other information do we want to know about the pose? The Sanskrit name. I can't pronounce them. Don't ask me to. What type of yoga is it? Is it hatha? Is it aerial yoga? Is it some other kind of yoga, right? We need to know what the category is. Is it arm balances, back bends, forward bends, inversions, things like that? What's our anatomical focus going to be? Is it arms? Is it abs? Is it our legs, back? You know, all the different anatomical focuses. And then, of course, our division, because we have different divisions. We have cardio and yoga and the different ones. And it would default to yoga because we're working with yoga poses, right? We don't necessarily want it to default to anything else. And then our pose details, that's going to be our document content type. We want the same basic information there about it, but that's going to be our description of it, right? Our information about it. So then I came down here and I said, okay, now let's look at our term sets. What are we going to need? Here's our types of yoga. Here's our categories. And then here's our anatomical focus. So this is all whiteboarding sessions, right? But this was really just me using OneNote as my whiteboard. 2 options there for tools and how you would kind of get started with it. All right, so the next thing that we had was, here's my worksheet. So remember I said they provide this wonderful Excel worksheet for you. So you can come in here, use your Excel worksheet. And this is for content type planning. Why am I not far enough over? It's not going to show the whole thing. Fun. We'll make it almost show the whole thing. How's that work? There we go. So we have our content type over here. What the scope is. Is it going to be an enterprise content type? Is it going to be a site content type? We made exercise because our whole organization was about exercise, our enterprise content type. And then just for the yoga division, we created the yoga poses. So we made those site content types, right? So I was trying to decide if I was running this company, how I would do this. By the way, this is actually based from a case study. There's a fairly franchised yoga organization in the U.S. that uses SharePoint just like this. and they create all of their classes from it. What do we want to focus on? They can go in, search, find it, and create all of their classes from it. Pretty cool. And you'll see how it works when I show you in the next session. What the URL is, where it's going to live, right? What the parent content type is going to be, and then we go through and start determining our column names, what type of column it's going to be, what the purpose is. Is it a new column, or is it already existing? Do we need to remove some columns that are already there, right? That may be an option too. And then you can start doing your templates if you've got templates already, workflows if you've got workflows that need to be happening. What is our information management policy going to be? So this whole worksheet takes you through all of those different pieces that can be part of your content type so that you can plan it all out, right? And you may want to do this just for specific smaller groups of organization, especially starting out, right? And then as new sites are being spun up, maybe your HR department comes to you and says, hey, we really need an HR site. Okay, well, what's the types of things that you're going to be working with? What data are you going to be using? Just a simple whiteboarding session with them, okay? And then plan that out. Give them the basics to start with so that they can go ahead and create these content types for themselves and the managed metadata for themselves and start managing that. Gives them a place to start. All right, we'll go back to this. And then how do we implement it? Well, it's pretty simple. Start at the beginning, right? That's the easy one. Creating your term sets and terms. That's pretty easy. We can go ahead and create those at the beginning of our implementation. Or if it's a new site, we can start creating some of the basics right there as we start so that we can give them a general idea. We will refine it as time goes on. It will become more managed. We'll start tearing things apart. So you may decide you want to move some term sets out, promote them out separately, moving things around. It's very possible, but at least start with the basics. Your departments, right? Or your divisions, however you're going to label those. Go ahead and start with those basics there. Then start with the content types with the least amount of settings. You remember those 3 plain templates that I had? Those were easy content types to start with. I would say that every organization at minimum needs to have their own document, their own spreadsheet, and their own PowerPoint to start with. Something that's branded the way that you want it to be, and everybody can use it. Your basic templates. Okay? Content types with settings that will need to be shared with other content types. So as you build your content types, then you want to build on those documents and settings even, and create more templates from those. So building on all of those so that you can pull that information from those parents. Create your site columns. There are thousands of out-of-the-box site columns. Some of them that I had never even seen or used. Go play with them. See if there's one that already meets your needs. If it's to say notes and you want it to say notes and it actually says comments as a site column, because I think that's what it says, it's okay. Use the comments, and then when you get to your list or library, just go change the label that's on it. That's the easy part. But it already provides that functionality for you where it will do like a history, right? Because the comment section does that. We want a comment section, but we want it to have a history of what the previous person commented so we can track it all the way through. And you try to create your own, why? It's already there out of the box. Just change the name on it, right? So it's easy to do that. But make sure that you go play with those content types and those site columns because they're really powerful already. This should be an obvious one, but it's not. Name them something meaningful. Not just document 1, document 2, document 3. Name it something that is really descriptive to your users. Don't overlook the description of the content type. That's really going to help them. Instead of seeing new document, create a new document, or new PowerPoint, create a new PowerPoint. Make it new project charter. Start here to create your project charter. Give it a description. Give them some instructions, some inspiration, some way to go with it so that they know what they need to do with that particular type of content. Categories are also meaningful. Don't just use, and it defaults to it every time, custom content types. And it defaults to custom site columns. I hate that. Don't use those descriptions. They're worthless to your users. When they're trying to find the content type and add it to their lists or libraries, they want to be able to find it quickly and easily. if you notice in mine, I used the A underscore and then the name of the place. I like mine to float to the top. It's just my little pet peeve. You know, I want all of mine at the top. Mine are better than everybody else's. So don't just use that, but make it meaningful. I worked with a company once that was actually had bought a bunch of little subsidiary companies. They all maintained their own identities and logos and all of this stuff. There was like 40 of them. And they wanted content types for everything. So we had to create categories for all of those different ones. So it was new subcompany 1 document, subcompany 2 document, subcompany 3 document. So they all had their logos on their things. So we had to make sure that we did that. Make it easy for your users. That's really the best thing that you can do there. If you've already got that jumbled mess, you can go in and fix it. So if you go start creating your content types and do that, you can fix it. If you've been in that company, just like me, where they said, here's SharePoint, use it. And everybody just starts throwing stuff in there. And now we need to somehow make it organized. Go in and fix it. Turn on management of content types. You just have to go in that list setting or library setting and turn that on. And then you can go to each individual item. Unfortunately, it's each individual item and set the property of the content type. Now, I am not a PowerShell guru by any means, but I'm quite certain that if you talk to a few of these IT pro guys, there's a few out there in the hall that I recognize, they can write you a PowerShell script. They can write you a PowerShell script that will do this once you've turned on management of content types. But you can do it individually at least. Okay, so it gives you the ability to do that. You can even do it in that quick edit mode. You can add it as a column in a view and just click it from that quick edit mode, okay? All right, so we're going to quick Q&A, take a break, and then come back for the next session.